Casey Joyner, the football scientist, ESPN.com. Casey, what's going on, pal?
Hey, doing great. How are you guys?
Very well. I wanted to ask you here about the hire of Bruce Arians with the Arizona Cardinals. Back in 2013, I believe there were seven guys hired. 6 of them were considered offensive minds, Gus Bradley being the only defensive guy going to the Jags. But going back to 2013, Casey, Bruce Arians has to be the best hire from that coaching class. And Chip Kelly is part of that coaching class, is he not, Casey?
Yeah, he would be, in the sense that, Arians has always been a great play caller. He's always been able to put together these high-powered offenses. But he also, you get a lot of coaches who coached on one side of the ball, and a lot of times they'll be good on that side of the ball, and they don't get the other side of the ball going in the same direction. They don't have an overall view of where they want their team to be. You can tell with Arians, he understands, this is what I want to do on offense. This is what I need to do on defense to go along with this offense. He sees the whole picture, so that's really what sets him apart from a lot of coaches.
And Arians, Casey, has no problem working with what he has. Now, Chip Kelly did that with Nick Foles and Mike Vick, obviously, but how about Arians' ability, and I guess schematically, when you talk about working with all different types of quarterbacks, whether it be Carson Palmer, Big Ben, Andrew Luck for a time period there, how about the scheme of Bruce Arians?
I think Arians will work with what he has, but what he wants and what he always is going to aim for is you got to give him at least one vertical threat or a couple of vertical threats. If he has vertical threats in his passing game, even if he just does, they don't have to be even the best, just good vertical threats in his passing game, everything else falls into place for him. He'll change to another system if he has to, but he wants to be the most vertically oriented team in football. And right now, the Cardinals are second in vertical pass attempts, and that's passes that travel 11 or more yards downfield when you're really trying to, move the defense. So as long as he has vertical threats, I think Arians could do whatever he wants on offense.
Casey Joyner joining us here on the Sports Bash with Scott Grayson and PG sitting in for Mike Gill. Casey, wanted to ask you about, you talked about that vertical passing game that the Cardinals possess. Teams have tried, few have succeeded in trying to slow that down. How do you think the Eagles will do in trying to accomplish that this Sunday?
I think the way that you stop Carson Palmer is he has a penchant for, he rates badly, or he's rated mediocre or worse, I should say, in a metric I have called bad decision rate. It measures how often the quarterback makes a mental error that leads to a turnover opportunity for the opposing team. He's not a guy who's going to be a dink-and-dunk quarterback. He never has been. He's always wanting to take downfield passes, downfield shots, and when he does this, he'll take more chances than he should. Sometimes, I don't know, put him in this kind of company, but there have been times when he's been in, a Jay Cutler-like in his penchant for taking downfield risks. So I don't think he's at that point right now, but if you're the Eagles, you're saying, look, these guys are going to try and go vertical. We've been able to slow down some vertical receivers of late. I mean, Sammy Watkins had the one play last week, but beyond that, on the 47-yard touchdown pass, he only caught one other vertical pass for like 16 yards. So we've been able to take some vertical threats out of the game, but what we need to do is limit the vertical threats where we can, but really try and get Palmer to force his go passes into coverage and catch those passes when he gives them to us.
Well, that's a great, statistic you have there. And so in terms of trying to do that and get back to the quarterback, one thing that a lot of teams don't have is a Fletcher Cox. What he can do for the Eagles and how much he's been affecting games lately in the backfield, how much will he, how important is it going to be, I guess, for the Cardinals to try to keep an eye on him and have to use some extra guys to maybe chip him away that allow some of the other Eagles personnel to get back there and get Carson Palmer to make some of the mistakes you were just talking about?
Yeah, if he can give you what Cox can give you is he can give you an outside pass rush. He can just give you also up the gut pressure though too. I mean, he's the sort of guy who he doesn't have to just go on the outside. I think he can. He's a guy who can mix it up in the middle too. So I think that's a big plus that he has. If you're getting pass rush pressure on Palmer, that's another big thing too. And that's where. And the other thing is that they really they've got Floyd and they've got Brown. And if you take Floyd and Brown and you can, limit them, you don't really have to worry as much about Fitz, because Fitz, they've had him do vertical passes earlier this year, but Fitz has been more of a dink-and-dunk receiver of late. So I think the Eagles put them and say, okay, we're going to expect that Fitz is going to just be our dink-and-dunk guy. So now all we got to do is stop Smokey Brown and stop Floyd. And like I said, those guys are kind of too. So if you just say we're going to take those things away, we're going to make you dink-and-dunk Carson Palmer, I think that's as much as anything is say you can have a touchdown if you go 12. Palmer will do that.
Casey Joyner, football scientist, ESPN Insider, 97.3 ESPN FM. You're right in the Insider section, Casey. Headline, finally executing Chip Kelly's formula. Eagles are dangerous. And you also mentioned here that the reason for this turnaround is that Eagles players are now checking off every part of Kelly's formula for success. What are those check marks, Casey?
In a nutshell, they are a high volume of rush attempts. You've got to be a rush-heavy team if you're a Chip Kelly team. They've ranked 4th in the league over the past 2 weeks there. They're getting superb run blocking and a metric I have good blocking rates. They're in an elite pace the past few weeks. Check the quarterback. You won't believe this, but Philadelphia actually this year ranks 3rd in the league in ESPN Stats and Information's pass protection metric. They had a bad stretch there for like 5 games, but outside of that, they've been superb at protecting the quarterback. Bradford doesn't make many bad decisions. We're talking about that metric there. He's fantastic in that area. He also gets good productivity when they have him throw downfield. They're getting the pass rush pressure where we're talking about Cox, and they have elite special teams play. Philadelphia was great in that metric last year, and that metric ESPN Stats Information has that measures that, and they've done fantastic on it since week 8. So they're like 1st in the league over the last 6 weeks. So you add those elements together, and it's tough to beat.
When you look...
Oh, sorry, Scott.
No, go ahead.
How about the Cardinals defensively with guys like number 1, Patrick Peterson, number 2, Honey Bashley, and number 3, Deion Buchanan. Those 3 guys, and Buchanan, I mean, the guy was a safety, I think, but now he kind of plays linebacker with what the Cardinals like to do defensively. How about the Cardinals defensively, Casey, with those 3 guys in particular?
Yeah, you definitely want. I would just avoid Peterson altogether. He's a shutdown quarter and ball hawk. I just would not go his way. Matthew, they'll move him from free safety over to play nickelback. They could kind of rover him around and such, and so he's a guy who, he's the ball hawk that Bradford's going to have to look for. To say that's somebody who you don't want to. The bad thing about that is that Bradford, he doesn't make many bad decisions, so he's not going to give him opportunities there, but if you want to go in a one-on-one battle against these cornerbacks, they can just out-physical the receiver for the football. So this is one of those games where I think a lot of it's going to hinge on if Bradford's accuracy holds up, because he's had a little bit of those issues of late. If he has accuracy problems, that could turn into turnovers against this defense. So Eagles need him to be spot on this game.
We were talking about before about on the defensive side, not every team has a Fletcher Cox. Not every team has a Darren Sproles either, and what he can give the Eagles. Casey, when you look at this matchup, it looks to me like Sproles could have some success, particularly as a receiver. How do you see him matching up against the Cardinals when the Eagles can try to get him the ball?
Yeah, the Cardinals do run a power defense a lot, and I think that this is one of those games where, like against the Patriots, the Eagles said, we're going to go ahead and just play a speed offense. We're going to go ahead, not just tempo, but we're also with personnel. We're going to put guys out there who are, a speed scheme, as it were, scheme up front, and that's I think they need to do in this contest, because if you're going to try and out-physical Arizona, that's just not something. That's a Bruce Arians trademark, is that he's going to have a team that's a tough team that's going to be able to play smash mouth football. So I think the Eagles need to play the same sort of game they played against New England and say, okay, we're going to challenge you to keep up, not just pace-wise, but also speed-wise. And I think that's a place where the Cardinals can do that some, but I think that you're playing to their weak strength, their weak spot if you do that.
Is this really the type of game, Casey, where the Eagles are obviously not as good as the Cardinals head-to-head? Do they really need a special teams touchdown or a pick six? Do they need maybe an X-play? Is that how you beat the Cardinals if you're the Eagles?
Yeah, I think you can get Carson Palmer to defeat himself by making bad decisions. I think that's one way you do it. But yeah, you can't. I guess maybe the best way to put it is you can't try and play their brand of football. If you go try and play their brand of football, there are some teams that can do it, but usually the Eagles are not the type of team that are going to be able to go play their brand of football. It's really going to come down to which team can play its brand of football, because if the Eagles can play Kelly ball and say, look, you're going to have to go at our pace and play this kind of fast-paced offense, I don't think that plays into what the Cardinals do well. But if the Cardinals can play their type of offense, which is we're going to power run the ball, and when we throw the ball, we're going to go vertical early and often, we're going to beat you over the top. If they can play that sort of game, it won't fare well for the Eagles. So I think the first quarter and a half of this contest is probably going to decide how this thing goes, because that's when the team's going to be able to set the pace.
Casey, when you look at Sam Bradford. Carson Palmer said earlier this week that he's been really impressed with how quickly Bradford's picked things up, that it takes time to really get comfortable with the people around you and in a new system when you change from one place to another. When you look at the numbers, it's easy to say, Bradford really struggled in the first half of the season, first 6 games really. And in the last 4, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, the trend says that Bradford's getting better. He's making better decisions. What are you seeing out of Bradford in those ways? And is this a trend, or is this just a flash in the pan, and he's going to come back down to being the other guy?
No, I think it's a trend. When they had that bad stretch where they had, or the stretch where they had the bad pass blocking, we were talking about that metric earlier, that's when Bradford was struggling. If he doesn't think he's getting pass blocking, that's when he starts to play poorly. But when he starts getting better pass blocking, he starts to play a whole lot better. And ESPN Stats and Information has a metric called total QBR. It measures quarterback production on all plays, not just passing plays, but running plays too. And since week 9, Sam Bradford ranks 8th in this metric on vertical, meaning when you're trying to go deep. So Bradford's not just dinking and dunking; he's able actually to get a lot of production out of downfield throws as well. So he's not making bad decisions, and he's hitting downfield passes when he does throw them. So that's the sort of thing where earlier in the year you had questions, hey, can the Eagles keep this vertical game going? And over the past 5 or 6 weeks, they've been able to do it.
Casey Joyner, football scientist, 97.3 ESPN FM. Let's go around the NFC East here, Casey. Let's talk about the Giants, their matchup against the Panthers this weekend at home. Listen, everyone knows the story is with the Giants, when they have their backs against the wall, they fight, and they fought against Miami. I mean, the game that Eli Manning had 27 of 31, 337 yards, 4 touchdowns. How about this matchup, the Giants against the undefeated Panthers?
The way you beat a team like the Panthers is you get into a shootout game. You get into a high-scoring game because the Panthers have given up 22 or more points, I want to say 6 times this year. I forget the exact number. I think it's 6 times. That's a lot. You don't want to be giving up that many points. That's pretty close to the definition of a shootout game. The Giants, let's put it this way. The Saints got the Panthers into a shootout game a few weeks ago and almost won. The Giants are perfectly capable of doing that and then some. Even though the Giants' defense is not great this year, it's a lot better than what the Saints were, and the Panthers barely won that contest. So I'm not going to be shocked if the Giants pull off an upset.
When you look at Carolina, you were just talking about them, and Arizona really seems to me like a better balanced team. What did your guys and all your metrics there say about which team is the team to beat in the NFC?
Yeah, I would think it's Arizona, even though Carolina has a lot of pluses. Carolina still, they have the secondary issues, and that's the thing I keep coming back to is and they've had some pass rush problems too, and that's part of it. But they just lost Ben Wickerby, one of their starting cornerbacks. Tillman's coming back from a knee injury, but it's still a question mark if he's going to be a full go. And if he's out, okay, now you're down to 3rd and 4th string and 5th string cornerbacks. They've had decent safety play at times, but they've had kind of shaky safety play at times too. So if you're going into the playoffs and you've got that kind of a weakness, and it's not, that's a big weakness to have, especially when you've got a Cardinals team that, frankly, you look at the Cardinals, they don't have a major weakness like that.
Casey Joyner, football scientist, 97.3 ESPN FM. Casey, it's funny. Eagles fans were booing, a lot of them at least, they were booing LaShawn McCoy on Sunday, but I guess now they're going to be cheering him this Sunday because the Bills are playing the Redskins. You got Shady and D-Jax going up head-to-head. How about that matchup, Redskins hosting Buffalo on Sunday, Casey?
Depends. If Washington's defense shows up, and they've been, it's talent-wise, you look at that defense and go, that's not a very good defense, and they've got a lot of players playing out of position. They've made a lot of changes of defense, but Buffalo's such a hit-or-miss offense, too. I mean, as good as Shady's played at times, as good as Watkins plays, if you keep Watkins from hitting big passes, Shady's not good. I don't think Shady's going to run enough of a breakaway back to get the offense going, and they've got nothing else in the passing game. So if Washington can just say, okay, we can take one player out of the game, out of the passing game, I think they could turn Buffalo one-dimensional, and they could win that contest.
Casey, when you look at it, obviously, when you look at it, the stretch here for all the teams in the NFC East that still have a shot at winning this division, basically the Eagles, the Redskins, and the Giants, it looks like for the Eagles, the game is the Eagles and the Redskins game. What do the metrics say about how that one matches up? I know the Eagles lost there before, and it was a crushing loss because they lost it in the last couple minutes of the game. How do those two teams match up now, and what does it look like that game's going to go when you figure out one way or the other that probably the winner of that game will probably win the division?
Well, Washington's as improved as they are in some ways. Look, they've got defense, they've got coverage issues. They don't run block very well, and Cousins does a terrible job on bad decision rate. Or he's very inconsistent. Cousins can, it can be worse than either Palmer. Probably Cousins can have a higher bad decision rate sometimes than Palmer and Bradford combined. I mean, that's he'll make a lot of errors. And the thing is, if you've got those sorts of weaknesses, you're going to turn the ball over, you can't run the ball, and you can't cover very well if things don't go well for you. I think that's a lot of weaknesses to have. So I'm looking at the Eagles where they're at and saying, okay, and the Eagles are playing pretty well, and they still have some weaknesses too, but nowhere near as many weaknesses as Washington has right now.
Wanted to go over to the AFC, Casey, and talk about the loss of Andy Dalton for the rest of the year for Cincinnati. They got to play A.J. McCarron. We know about Alabama quarterbacks in the NFL. They're terrible. What does that do to the AFC? I know in New England they just lost LeGarrette Blount, so I'm not sure about that power running game the rest of the way. How about the number 1 seed, number 2 seed for the AFC, Casey? And Denver in there as well, obviously.
I can see Bolden and White holding up well for New England. I don't worry quite as much about their backfield. You'd like to have a power rushing game, but I think if they with what they have, if they have to go all pass, they have to go all pass, and they'll just replace the power rushing plays with some dink and dunk passes. I'm not quite so worried about them. As far as Cincinnati goes, not worried too much this week because San Francisco is the worst rushing defense in the league right now, and I think Cincinnati is going to be able to run the ball, and they'll still get there. They'll still make the playoffs. There's talk about, they're not going to make the playoffs. Cincinnati's going to make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to win the number 1 seed because McCarron does have some weaknesses that may show up in the last 2 games. But as far as that goes, I think it's still be New England number 1. New England's still the team to beat, although they're getting so many injuries right now that they're going to be a team that if you catch them on the wrong day, you can beat them.
It looked like earlier in the year that, aside from Arizona and Carolina in the NFC, that the AFC was likely, the stronger conference. Injuries have seemed to be the great equalizer. Certainly the Patriots have tried to weather the storm on some of that. I know Tom Brady's getting some of his weapons back, but they continue to just run a turnstile of guys in at running back now with LeGarrette Blount out. What's everything saying about how the Patriots are going to fare as they try to weather another injury?
Well, their issues have really been up front because they're making some changes in the offensive line. That's as big of a concern for them as anything because if you can block for Brady, if you say, hey, we don't have a running game. Remember what they did against the Jets earlier this year? They just decided we're not going to run the football. I think they ran like 10 times or something. They threw like 50 times. I mean, it's a ridiculous ratio of passes to runs. And so if New England, if you can give Brady pass block, and they don't mind having Brady sit back going, fine, we'll have him just read and throw 5-yard dink and dunks because he's not going to get impatient like Palmer and say, hey, I want to go from these big passes. He'll take dink and dunks all the way downfield. So they'll be okay as long as they can pass block for him.
We saw with Green Bay, Casey, against Dallas, Eddie Lacy really returned to form. I mean, this guy was, I guess, benched. He was benched in the first half of that one game. They kind of turned to James Starks, too, this season. Mike McCarthy, he's back on board with calling the plays. How about that NFC North between Minnesota and Green Bay?
Between McCarthy calling the plays, and he calls a different type of game than what they were calling before, but it was looking pretty effective, and he wants to get the running game going. Between that and the motivation that he gave to Lacy by demoting him, in the Detroit game, between those two, I think you're seeing Lacy getting back to what he was. And it's funny because everybody, when you look at the Packers, you want to concentrate on Rodgers and the pass he gave us. They usually, over the at least past few years, they've been near the bottom of the league in number of pass attempts per game because they're a rush-heavy team. They run the ball and make you stop the run, and then Rodgers just destroys you through the air on vertical passes. So it looks like that's where their offense is getting back to. And Minnesota, as good as they are, Bridgewater still has a way to go for downfield passes. They have no vertical game right now, and teams are starting to clamp down on Adrian Peterson. Plus, their secondary is really banged up, and they're giving up a lot of vertical passes. So I think Minnesota makes the playoffs, and it's a good year from that perspective. But Green Bay is going to win the division, and they're the team to worry about in that division.
Casey, saw an interesting stat here, and when you look at the league as a whole, we're entering 3 weeks to play in the regular season. 25 of the 32 teams are still mathematically alive for the playoffs. the parity in this league. You take a couple of the outliers out, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Bengals, say the Arizona Cardinals, and the Carolina Panthers, who've just had great seasons. 108 games this season have been decided by 7 points or fewer. Is this as equal a parity we've seen around the league in quite some time, and do you see that changing anytime soon?
If people keep players healthy, I think it might change. I think that's a big part of it. Is this season's been as much defined by how many major injuries have happened. We always get injuries, but I do some fantasy stuff for ESPN as well, and fantasy owners just, even by week 5, they like 12 of the top 20 backs were hit with injuries. I mean, it's, what do you do? I mean, when you're losing that many people. That's the thing. I think the big thing this year, and what might have the biggest story as far as what might have helped with that, I think teams came into this year thinking we're going to be able to run the ball more. There's going to be more of a trend a little bit towards power running again for a number of factors between offensive line play and a better set of running backs and things. But that hasn't panned out because the backs have gotten injured. So I think teams have had to go back to, we're going to go back to, to a passing game. We're not going to be able to make the transitions we thought we were going to make. So if teams can keep people healthy, or maybe they can get even deeper running back cores, I think we'll see a little more split away from this parity.
Football scientist Casey Joyner, ESPN NFL Insider, 97.3 ESPN FM, every Monday and every Thursday here on the Sports Bash. Casey, parting question here. I guess Roman Reigns is finally over, right? If you can get over in Philly, you're pretty much over anywhere, right?
Yeah, well, it helps when you have Vince McMahon put you over. If Vince Senior comes, or Vince Jr. comes back and stays there, that's great. Or maybe maybe we have him come out every so often, and we just got. But is he going to be able to stay over against Triple H, who faces him at WrestleMania? Is that the match we really want to see?
Yeah, we'll see about that. And also enjoy the Star Wars showing tonight. You going to dress up and head on out there tonight at midnight, Casey?
We have tickets actually tomorrow. I'm taking it after the kids get out of school tomorrow. We're going to all go, and I might not get dressed up, but the kids will, though.
All right. Enjoy the football this weekend, Casey. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys.